All right. Well, thanks everyone for joining, and thanks to Vaibhav, who has joined us tonight to talk about Microsoft Azure certifications. Appreciate that. Thanks for everyone joining. Just out of curiosity, has anyone not participated in an Azure user group meeting before? If you want to just put something in chat, if you want to just introduce yourself, that's great. If you want to be anonymous, that's okay too. But always like to give new people a chance to introduce themselves. If not, I'm going to turn this over to Sam and Elliot and Matt. You guys want to say anything on behalf of IO Associates?
Els, you want to chat? I'll back you up if you want.
You say about the Slack. So for those of you that have been here before, you would have heard this a couple of times. For the new people, I guess it's just good to give you a bit of background on us. So Sam, Matt and I work for IO. We're a software and cloud specialist recruitment company based in Tampa. We'd love to connect with you if you're ever looking for roles. We've got quite a lot of interesting stuff going on at the moment. If you need any career advice at all, any ideas on what looks good in the resume, just contact us. We're hopefully a friendly bunch, so we'd always welcome a chat outside of the meetup side of things to kind of help you move forward in your career, really. So we don't have that many people reach out, so don't be scared. We're more than happy to help where we can. In terms of the meetups, big part of what we like to invest in and help grow across Tampa, particularly. Looking to keep getting feedback, and Sam's got something which he wanted to announce that we're setting up to kind of enable an easier channel for you to get involved and give advice and feedback and ideas for kind of upcoming events, etc.
Hopefully it's an exciting announcement. I don't know whether it is or not. So as Elliot rightly said, I think that what we see a big part of our day job is connecting with people and growing community and giving back where possible. And this has been a brilliant avenue to do that and to connect with all you lovely people in the cloud areas that we recruit for. And we'd like to think that we could grow this community too. We're also a little bit conscious that meetup.com is sometimes a bit rubbish as a bit of a platform. It's great to have that content there, and it's nice to have that kind of event and calendarize it directly into your Outlooks or whatever it is. But you only really hear from us maybe once a month or twice a month, depending on how many meetups you go to. And it's usually via that meetup.com. So it's a little bit less personalized until we actually get to chat with you. So in the interim, we were thinking of setting up a group Slack chat. Now, I've done everything. I've set up the channel now, I've set up the workspace, and we've broken down the individual channels, and there'll be different workspace groups, almost like a general chat. And then if you wanted to speak, you could talk on, put an idea forward for a presentation or a deck you wanted to create, any troubleshooting, anything really, just to keep the communication a little bit more open and a little bit more personable. Plus we could just chat throughout the month and just help each other out. This is a bit of a new thing for us, and hopefully it'll be a far easier way of communicating. I appreciate Slack is something that's so widely used in your businesses, personally, everything really. So hopefully it should be a far easier way of communicating. I'm going to set that up. I'll put the workspace out via meetup.com. So I'll send you a message soon. So please don't delete that one. Keep it, and it should be really easy to join and pretty intuitive. But hopefully that's something that's going to be interesting for you guys, and then you can invite your friends and we can create a bit more of a community feel for it and have a conversation in the interim, in the meantime, and grow it further. So yeah, a little bit, so hopefully something that's a bit more interesting, and over to Vaibhav to kind of talk to you about Azure Role-Based Certifications. If you've got any questions afterwards, we'd love to connect, and take it away.
All right, so Vaibhav, we're going to turn this over to you. And if anyone, if you Google Vaibhav and look at the number of Microsoft certifications, you'll see he's pretty well entrenched in the Microsoft Azure environment and has a lot of strong experience. So welcome, Vaibhav, and the mic is yours.
So are you recording this session?
Yep.
Yes.
All right. So, hey everyone, a very good evening. Thanks, Jeff, for having me here in this group. So as everyone was posting, they have been here for first time. So I'm also here for the first time virtually in this user group and speaking. So I hope I will be able to share good information with you, which you can take forward and probably benefit from it. But a couple of logistic things, right? I use 3 monitors at my desk. This is where I can see all of your faces. This is the screen that I'm sharing, and this is my camera. And so if I'm turning my faces, so don't worry that this is where I'm looking at you all. So if I turn my face, don't worry about it that I'm not looking at you. So that being said, let's get started. Thanks everyone for having me here. I wish every one of you to stay safe, and I hope everyone in your family is staying safe and healthy. And I hope I run Omaha Azure user group. I have my intro slide in the next slide, but I understand how virtual setup is really difficult to manage and pull people to come and attend these meetings. So I really appreciate all the user groups I speak at, and I appreciate all the organizers. So thanks to the organizers, they are doing a great job. So as Jeff mentioned, today's topic for the day is Azure Role-Based Certifications, and I'm gonna speak a few things from my own experience, what I have learned, how I've grown my career by going through some of the Azure role-based certifications, and probably you will be able to take some points out of it and take some benefit out of it. Before we jump onto Azure role-based certifications, I want to introduce myself. My name is Vaibhav Gujral. I'm based out of Omaha, Nebraska. I'm not based out of Tampa Bay. So I am in Central Time Zone. I run Omaha Azure User Group, just like the group is similar to the group that to this one. I'm a Microsoft Azure MVP and a Microsoft Certified Trainer. I'm a cloud architect at Kiewit for my day job. As you can see, I have earned numerous Azure role-based certifications in last 2 to 3 years. And I regularly speak at different user groups, events, and conferences on Azure-related topics. I regularly blog on vaibhavgujral.com. I say regularly, but it's not as regularly as I speak in these user groups. But you can go and check out my blog. And if you want to reach out to me after this session, you can reach out to me on Twitter or on LinkedIn. Here's the agenda that we are going to talk through today. I will go through all the different role-based certifications that are offered by Microsoft today in Microsoft Azure. I'll share how we can register for exams, what are the different delivery options that Microsoft offers, how the exams are structured, and how the exams are scored. I'll also share how you can download your badges and certificates and transcripts for the certifications that you have earned, and share it with your employers, friends, and share it in social media. And then I will also share some tips and tricks and do's and don'ts, and how you can get started with your presentation, and some learning resources that I have personally used for my own preparation. And lastly, I'll touch upon why certifications really matter and why you should really go for Azure certifications. The expectation is not that I'm gonna train you on a particular certification today. That's not the intent. The expectation is I will be going through each and every certification exam that exists for Azure today, and just briefly touch upon what's the purpose behind each of that certification and the underlying exam. The idea is to motivate people so that they can understand the value that role-based certifications offer and they can pursue on their own. And as I said in my intro slide, you can reach out to me on Twitter or LinkedIn if you need any guidance, any help, any support. I'll be more than happy to help you out. So if you have been working in Microsoft technologies since last decade or two, you would have heard of certifications known as MCSCs, MCSAs, MCSDs. So those were nothing but Microsoft Certified Solution Expert, Solution Associates, and Solutions Developers. Those are the old certifications before Microsoft has introduced these role-based certifications around 4 or 5 years back. Now, the interesting part is most of these are either retired or they are on the verge of getting retired. Most of them, I believe, they are getting retired this month end on January 31st, and there has been a little noise around that. But you have to understand that all the Azure related certifications, the MCSCs, MCSN, MCSD, are very old certifications and they are not relevant. The content that these certifications have, if they are still not retired, dates back to the content that existed in Azure way back in 2014, 15, and 16. So my suggestion is, if you are registering for an exam, if you see any of these exams which still show up as as an active exam that you can register for, don't go for that. The benefit that I always liked about these exams were that these are never expiring exams. Meaning the current role-based certification exams expire every 2 years and you have to go for renewal. But that was not the case with those older ones. So I like those MCSEs, MCSA certifications. I had those certifications earned earlier in my career. And I always felt, what's the need for the new role-based certifications? And we'll touch upon that, why Microsoft introduced it. So if you have been working on Azure since last 5-6 years, so we'll know that the current set of certifications that exist are not the first iteration of these exam certifications. There used to be 7532, 7533, and 7534 exams, which were the first iteration of the role-based certifications. If you will go and check it out on Google, you will find out that 532 exam was targeted for Azure developers, 33 was intended for administrators, and 34 was intended for solution architects. 534 was later updated to 535, but all those three exams were based on initial 3 job roles that Microsoft has identified for people who would be working on Azure. So there were only 3 roles: developers, administrators, and solution architects. But since then, Azure has evolved a lot. I remember when I started in 2010 working on Azure, there were only 3 or 4 services when it was launched. Now, I guess there are close to 500 services that Microsoft offers under Azure ecosystem. So it has grown vast, and it's not really fair to expect a single person to know each and every technology running in Azure. So I think that was the whole reason Microsoft has scrapped these initial role-based certifications and came up with the new ones. Now, if you are also from .NET background, you have been developing .NET-based solutions for Azure, there were exams like 7486, 7487, which were around running your .NET-based solutions in Azure. Those exams are still active. You can go and register for them today. But do remember that those exams are expiring on January 31st, 2021. So to get the complete list of which exams are active and which ones are getting retired, I would suggest you to go ahead and check out the link that I have listed down below there. Here is just a snapshot of our Azure ecosystem today, how many services Azure offers today. So as you can see under the hood, they have infrastructure as services, which are compute, network, and storage services. The core infrastructure that enables all the platform services that sits on top of that. If you will see the platform as a services, there is a different section for all the web services, a separate section for data services, a separate section for IoT, for AI, for DevOps, for integration, for compute, and so on. Likewise, you have separate pillars for security and management services. So this was the whole idea how Microsoft came up with the new roles, and Microsoft has grouped or created those different personas based on these different kind of services. So what you really see on this screen now is the new set of role-based certifications that Microsoft offers now in Azure space, starting with Azure Fundamentals, which is the most basic fundamental certification, which anyone who is just getting started with cloud and Azure can go with to test their knowledge. But then everything that you see listed there is specific to a role which is linked back to one or the other services in the diagram that I was showing you in the last screen. For example, administrator is similar to a sysadmin role, who used to manage the infrastructure earlier in traditional on-prem data centers. The similar role has evolved into what is known as an Azure administrator. Likewise, for DBAs, the role has been mapped into Azure Database Administrator. For developer, the role name is Azure Developer. For security engineers, for people who work on InfoSec departments, ensuring everything is laid down securely, you have a tight security posture in your environments. The certification valid that makes sense for those folks is Azure Security Engineer certification. Then there are certain data certifications like data engineer, data scientist, AI engineer. And then there are a couple of others, one for solutions architect, and the other one is for a DevOps engineer, which are, I guess, is easy to understand. I will touch upon each of those certifications in the next slides to talk about what each of those certifications really cover. But I think it would give you a good idea of how many services Azure offers today and how many personas Microsoft envisions for the people who would be using Azure in one or the other capacity. Then towards the right, you also see a specialty certification, which is for specialized workloads like IoT or running SAP in Azure. I'll touch upon those as well in the coming slide. But few key takeaways out of this slide is, first of all, the change between the older subscriptions and these new subscription is each of these subscriptions come with an expiry date of 2 years, meaning if I earn the certification today, it will expire after 2 years and I have to retake it, re-earn it to extend that certification. Microsoft has recently announced that anyone who has an active certification, they can go ahead and take an assessment in Microsoft Learn to go ahead and renew their certifications by 1 year. The offer has not yet started. It appears it's gonna start from February 2021. So watch out for that. One last thing you will notice here is each one of the badges that I'm showing for those certification has a number of stars there. Starting with fundamentals, it has 1 star. Then there are few which has 2 stars and the few which have 3. So 1 star refers to the fundamentals level, 2 stars refers to associates, 3 stars refer to experts, which I want to touch upon in my next slide, what each of them entails to. So the fundamentals certifications, as I was saying, are ideal for people who are just beginning in cloud technology. They might be technical or non-technical, with technical or non-technical background, or they might have knowledge on Azure, or they might just be beginning with it. The next level is associate level, where the expectation is that person has at least 2 years of comprehensive working experience, like developers or in administration or kind of like that. Then expert is someone who has deep technical expertise in particular domain, in particular Azure ecosystem. And lastly, specialty, as I was saying, entails to specialized services running on Azure like IoT and SAP in Azure. And feel free, if you have any questions, you can interrupt me and ask me any questions. You don't have to be on mute and wait till the end. I would appreciate if you have any questions and you want to ask in between, you can interrupt me. Here, what you see is a map of those certifications, how they appear. Towards the left, as you can see, is the fundamentals certification. AZ 900 is the exam which you have to take to earn Microsoft Certified Azure Fundamentals certification. Now you will notice that that particular certification is an optional certification. And since I have put fundamentals to the left, it doesn't really mean that it's a prerequisite for the associate and experts one. It's a completely optional certification. And if you want to test out your basic fundamental cloud knowledge, you can go for that exam, but it's not a mandatory exam to earn any of the other certifications. Under the associate, you can see AZ-104, which is for administrators. AZ-204 is for developers, and AZ-500 is for security engineers. Now, AZ-104, AZ-204, AZ-500 lets you earn associate certifications. Towards the right, you will see there are some expert certifications. One is the DevOps engineer expert certification, and the other one is Azure Architect expert certification. So if you will see the DevOps one, it has two prerequisites. By two, I didn't mean that you have to earn both administrator or developer associate certification before you can earn Azure DevOps engineer certification. You can still go ahead and take AZ-400 before you take 104 or 204, but you will only get or earn Azure DevOps certification when you will take the prerequisite exam as well. Whereas for solutions architect expert exam, you have to take two exams, 303 and 304. Now, if you are from Azure Stack background, there is an exam called 7537, which speaks about configuring and operating your hybrid cloud with a Microsoft Azure Stack. The exam has been due for retirement. The 7537 exam is getting retired by end of this month, and the exam will be replaced by a new exam called AZ-600, which will cover same topics. And it's currently in beta. I will talk about what beta exams are in my next slides. But that if you can write that exam and clear that exam, you can earn the certification called Microsoft Certified Azure Stack Hub Operator Associate. And towards the right, as I've been saying, that there are two specialty exams, one certifications. One is for IoT developers, and the other one is for SAP workloads.
Hey, Vaibhav, I've got a question.
Yeah, go ahead.
So in the associate ranks and in the expert, from your experience and just from, industry discussions, what do you think is the hardest associate test to take and why? And what's the most difficult expert, would you say?
So I will tell you based on my experience. In my opinion, it all depends on your past experience. Like I come from an application development background. So 204 was not very difficult for me because I had been using those app services and other developer-based focus services. Where I really put in hard work and struggled was AZ-104, because traditionally I don't come from a infrastructure background, and AZ-104 is focused more towards infrastructure side of things like virtual machines, virtual networks, and so on. So I did really had a good time spent on AZ-104. For AZ-204, I would have prepared just in 2 to 3 weeks, but for 104, I took almost 6 to 8 weeks to go through each and every concept. And if you look at AZ-400 exam, it's also difficult. I mean, even though if you come from application development background, you can earn developer certification, but AZ-400 takes that one step forward, and it includes all the different DevOps concepts, which is a good exam, but I didn't find it to be really very challenging. The most challenging exam in expert section was AZ-303. And I'll touch upon each of these exams further in depth, but to answer your question, AZ-104 and AZ-303 were my favorite exams, which were the most challenging to me. I learned the most in those two exams.
Okay.
Vaibhav, this is Sanjeev. I have a quick question. If am I allowed to ask a quick
Go
question?
ahead, please go ahead.
Okay, it's on AZ-500. I
Yeah,
understand that they are changing the exam in February. The current exam they are changing, and I think right a week after I'm taking the new version, which I really don't know what to expect. Based on your experience, how much of a difference you think it will make, or should I reschedule for later so I can get some feedback from people?
No, it depends on how much change they are making in a particular exam, because if you have been following these role-based certification exams, Microsoft keeps on updating the content or the objectives for each of these certifications. Sometimes the changes are minor. If the changes are minor, they don't change the exam number. If the changes are major, they go ahead and change the certification number as well. And as far as I have read, I believe AZ 500 exam number is not changing. The numbers remains the same, which gives me an hint that the changes are not drastic. Changes would be addition or removal of minor topics, but it might not be major. But I will still encourage you to check out the exam objectives under the exam page. There they will list what changes you can expect. And if you feel uncomfortable with the upcoming changes, I would suggest you to take some time and probably reschedule your exam accordingly. Does that help?
Yes, thank you.
Okay, for the data folks who come from data background, Microsoft also has two fundamental certifications. Again, these are similar to Azure Fundamentals exams. They are optional. You can go for DP 900 or AI 900. I'll touch upon what each of these are for in the next slide. But as the name suggests, data fundamentals is for the people who are from data engineering or data scientist backgrounds. AI fundamentals exam is for the people who have backgrounds in AI or artificial intelligence. When I say background, since this is fundamentals exam, you might not have background, but at least you should have interest, and you will be tested against if you know some of the concepts that are used in data services and AI services in Azure. Under the associate certification, as you can see, there is a certification for data engineer, a data scientist, a database administrator, and an AI engineer. I will talk about each of those, what goes under each of those in the next slides, but to give you a hint or an idea on the different set of certifications that exist for data folks here. And again, if you want to move one step further, the only certification that's applied on top of all the associate certifications is the solution architect certification, which we have covered in the last slide. Now, if you will be aware, coming to Sanjeev's point, there are changes coming up in certifications all the time. And some, as I was saying, there are times when Microsoft make major changes in the content or the objectives for each of these exams. Microsoft changes the number of the exams. So that is what is happening for for data engineer and AI engineer exam. For data engineer exam certification, they are clubbing both DP 200 and 201 into an exam called 203, DP 203. And for the AI engineer exam, they are changing AI 100 to AI 102, which indicates there are going to be major changes in the exam objectives. Does that help, Sanjeev? Probably this is what I generally try to follow if I'm registered for an exam and Microsoft is going to change the exam number. I probably get it canceled or I apply for the new exam.
Thank you.
Moving on, as I was saying, I've shown in the last slides, there are three fundamentals exams, Azure Fundamentals, AI Fundamentals, and Data Fundamentals. Azure Fundamentals is intended for candidates who are new to cloud or who are interested to work in cloud. They can be from technical or non-technical background. It touches at a very high level on the different cloud concepts like what's IaaS, what's PaaS, what's SaaS, what are the different core Azure services, what purpose do they serve, what are the different security, governance, and compliance features. When I say it's very high level, they don't go very deep in that, but the only expectation is that you understand how and for what purpose these services can be used. For example, they might ask you, they might give you a scenario and they can ask you in this scenario, which service you will use. They won't ask how you will use, but they can ask which service you can use. Similarly, for AI fundamentals, it's intended for candidates who have foundational knowledge of machine learning and artificial intelligence. You might have a background in that or not, but when you are preparing for that exam, you should, before appearing for that exam, you should know those concepts on AI and machine learning. Similarly, for data fundamentals, the expectation is that candidates should know the core data concepts, the like differences between relational and non-relational databases, what relational databases services are offered by Azure, what are the non-relational database services offered by Azure, in which scenario you will use Cosmos DB, in which scenario will you use an Azure SQL database, in which scenario will you run a SQL server on a virtual machine, and scenarios like that. I have listed a link there so you can go and check it out in future. Even if Microsoft adds more fundamentals exam, it will show up in that list, in that link, and you can go ahead and check it out. And again, to point it out, these are the optional exams. These are not a prerequisite for any other exam. You can directly go for 104, AZ 204, or AZ Solution Architect exams without going through fundamentals exam. The different associate certifications that I have shown you earlier are listed here. There are 7 in total. I'll touch upon each of those in the next slides. The first one is the Azure Administrator certification. That certification needs you to clear an exam called AZ-104, which is for Microsoft Azure administrators. It's intended for administrators who actually manage your Azure environments on a daily basis. The couple of hints I can give what it covers essentially is around, if you remember when I was showing those Azure services in the initial slide, all the core infrastructure services that Azure offers are tested heavily in this exam, ranging from virtual machines, virtual networks, storage, networking services, and whatnot. And it does touches upon identity, Azure AD, and how you enable MFAs, how you set up conditional access policies, and so on. And lastly, it also covers how you can back up and monitor your Azure virtual machines, how can you back up your disk, and so on. So it's primarily targeted for infrastructure services. But again, I have given 103, which I have earned this certification before the exam content was updated. So I will highly recommend you to check out the link I have posted there and go through the exam objectives once to be up to date on what might be covered in that exam. Similarly, to an Azure administrators for DBAs who manage Azure SQL databases or other Azure data services, the certification is Azure Database Administrator Associate certification. The exam number is DB300. It's pretty straightforward. It covers all the activities that a DBA is expected to perform on different data services, like implementing security for your databases, optimizing query performances, implementing high availability and disaster recovery for your databases. How will you back up your databases? How will you recover your databases? How will you fail over from primary to secondary? And it also expects you, how will you tune your T-SQL queries? How will you identify which queries consuming more compute of your database, and so on. I have listed a link down below for the certification. Again, check exam objectives and to be up to date on what is the expectation of this exam. The next on the list is AZ-204, which is for Azure Developer Associate exam. It's intended for Azure developers who build and test and maintain cloud solutions running in Azure. So as and you would have guessed, the skills that it covers is around the platform services, primarily like Azure Compute Solutions like app services, storage accounts, and also on security. How do you secure your applications when you deploy it in Azure? And how do you monitor app insights, log analytic workspace? It does cover all those things which are being used by developers on day-to-day basis. The next one is Security Engineer Associate exam, which is targeted for security engineers who ensure that they have a tight security posture in Azure environments. It includes identity. How do you manage identity and access control in Azure environments? How do you implement platform protection? It might include how do you encrypt your data? How do you encrypt at rest? How do you encrypt in transit? How do you manage security operations? How do you use security center? How do you identify threats? How do you and whatsoever in security space, all the Azure security services are covered in this area. How do you secure your data? How do you secure your applications using Azure AD or any other authentication mechanism? The next one is on Azure AI Engineer Associate certification. And the exam number is, as I said, is 102. Right now it's AI 100 as well. I believe AI 100 will be replaced by AI 102 by end of this month. So it's intended for AI engineer who use cognitive services. If you're not aware of cognitive services, it's primarily the face, the vision, and the other APIs which are used for artificial intelligence, and as well as it also covers some machine learning concepts. So the content, the skills that I have listed there are measured is taken from the exam page. And if you will go to that exam page, it details under each of those listed items what all is covered and what is not.
I have a quick question. In
Yes,
the
go ahead.
security engineer associate level of the exam, based on your experience, and I apologize because I'm not sure you have already taken that one, but my question is how much of services like DLP, CASP, data discovery, classifications, those sorts are covered in that certification exam?
I gave this exam again in 2019. So back then it was, I would say, not very extensive. But again, the exam content keeps updating. So I would suggest to check the exam objectives.
Okay,
But
thank you.
it primarily focuses more on Azure services. Which services will you use for each of these uh, concepts, and how will you implement that is the focus of the exam.
Thank you.
Moving on, for data scientists, there is a separate certification, Azure Data Scientist Associate, and it includes an exam called DP100. It primarily focuses on a service called as Azure Machine Learning. If you have worked on Azure Machine Learning, you can create your models, train your models, and you can use different algorithms like regression and classification and whatnot. So this certification exam covers all that. And similarly, you also have data engineer exam, which is slightly different from database administrator and data scientist exam. It covers totally on data storage, data processing, how it's not administration, but actually consuming the data services. It also covers some of the machine learning aspects that are covered in DP100. But as far as I remember, I have not given 200. I have given 201. But there were a little bit of questions on machine learning as well. And do check out that the exam DP200 and DP201 are gonna merged into a single exam, DP203, which will be titled Data Engineering on Microsoft Azure. So do check out that exam and don't register for 201 and 200 now. Go for the new exam. This is the exam I was mentioning earlier. There used to be an old exam 7537 for managing your hybrid cloud using Azure Stack, which is now replaced by AZ600. I don't come from Azure Stack background, but what I have understood is it talks about how you can utilize Azure Stack, how you can integrate your on-prem data center with your Azure environment, how do you manage an entity and access control through Azure Stack, and so on. So those are all the associate certifications. Likewise, you have a couple of expert certifications that I was pointing out earlier. The first one being the solution architect expert, and then the Azure DevOps engineer expert. For solution architect expert, there are 2 exams that you have to write, AZ303 and AZ304. In my opinion, when Jeff was asking, AZ303 has been the most difficult exam I have appeared for so far. The reason being it covers so much of content, and the difference between 303 and 304 is 304 focuses on design and design, and it's more of a theoretical exam where it give you scenarios and you have to design a solution, whereas AZ303 goes level further, And it also includes some implementation details, which makes it very tricky. Now it's, as the name for the certification suggests, it's intended for solution architects who have expertise in across the board, not only in infrastructure services, not only in platform services, but across the board. And that's why you will see when you will go and look up that exam, the skills measured under solution architect expert exam are the longest, and it will most likely have a mix of all the associate certification exams. And I have prepared for AZ 104, AZ 204 before I started preparing for 303 and 304. Once I did that, once I did prepare for 104 and 204, I already had covered half of the content that was listed under 303 and 304. The next exam is on DevOps Engineer Expert exam certification. As I was saying, it needs you to clear AZ 400 exam, which has you have to clear one of the two prerequisites, either the administrator certification or the developer certification. It includes all the different DevOps concepts around site reliability. How do you devise instrumentation strategy? How do you manage source control for your applications? How do you implement continuous integration, continuous delivery? How do you facilitate communication and collaboration between your teams? It basically assesses you against all the DevOps practices and how you can implement those in Azure-based solutions. These are the Azure specialty certifications for folks who have experience running SAP workloads in Azure, who have experience in running SAP HANA environments in Azure. This is a certification intended for those folks to go for. And then we have IoT developer specialty certification, which is intended for IoT developers who work on their IoT use cases and work on Azure services like IoT hubs and so on. So with that, I have briefly touched upon each of the Azure certification that exists today. I would like to take a pause and see if anyone has any questions for me before I move on.
Maybe, are you going to later talk about the format of the test questions and, online labs, etc.?
I am going to.
Okay, all right, terrific. Thank you.
Do you know if there's more demand for any particular area of expertise, or does that just kind of vary from time to time?
I think it varies upon time, and that's one of the questions I generally struggle with when people ask me, hey, which certification I should earn, which will be most beneficial to me. I think what really matters are two things. First of all, your background, what background you are from. If you are from application development background, if you are an architect, then you should probably go with solution architect exam. But if you are from, let's say, security background, going through security engineer certification would be most beneficial to you. That's based on your past background. The other aspect to it is where you want to grow. Do you want to grow in security space? Do you want to grow in administration? Do you want to grow in DevOps? Based on that, you can also consider the certification you should opt for. And again, there is no hard and fast statistics that I can find out and showcase that, hey, if you go and do this particular certification exam, it will be the most beneficial to you. I think all those certifications are well thought through, and all are beneficial based on your past background and what you want to do in your career going forward.
I'll add my perspective working for an MSP. I would say there's a lot more architects out there than DevOps engineers, true DevOps engineers and security specialists. We see a lot of Azure customers who have been in Azure for 2 or 3 years, and governance and cost optimization and security kind of got left for a rainy day. and they get compromised or they failed an audit, and now they're saying, guys, help us out here. We really don't understand security on Azure or security on AWS. And so if you wanted to look at what the market is demanding, I would say, definitely security is not ever going to go away. And it looks like security on
DevOps.
Azure and AWS continue to get more and more complex. So that's something to consider also.
Good point, Jeff. Okay, moving forward, if in case you haven't registered for an exam in the past, so if you can head out to any of the exams that you are willing to take, I have provided links in the older slides. I'll be sharing the slide deck with Jeff so that he can share it with the folks. But whichever exam you are interested in, once you go to the web page for that particular exam, and if you will scroll down, you will see a yellow box or yellow button there for scheduling your exam. That's where you start for registering for that exam. Once you click on that, and it will take you to a Microsoft website where it will ask you your address, your phone number, your name, and if you have any voucher or any discount that you want to use. Once you are through that, it will redirect you to Pearson VUE website, which is the official testing partner for Microsoft, and it will give you certain options that you can choose to take your exam. First option is you can either go to a local test center outside and take an exam there. The other option is you can take at the comfort of your home or office. Then you can also take it at a Certiport test center, which I believe is a testing partner in few selected countries with Microsoft. And then if you are at a training, like a virtual training day from Microsoft, where they give free certification vouchers, they sometimes give you a private access code, which you can utilize to take an exam during the training itself. But whatever works for you, I mean, especially in these COVID-19 days, I have taken some certifications last year at the comfort of my home, which really works well. I can take exams any time of the day, even at night. I take exams at 9 o'clock at night or 5 o'clock in the morning when my kids are sleeping. So see what works for you. You can go find out the list of local test centers in the website as well. Once you will select a local test center, it will ask for your location and give you the list of nearby test locations. Now, one key thing I want you to be aware of when you go and register for an exam, it just comes with a one take. It doesn't, if you unfortunately are not able to clear the exam in the one go, you lose your money and you have to register for the exam once again if you have to appear for that. And sometimes these certifications are not cheap. The fundamentals one cost $99, whereas the associate and expert certifications cost, each exam cost $165. Meaning if I go with solution architect exam, it's gonna cost over $300 for me to give 303 and 304 exam. And if I couldn't clear the exam on the first attempt, I have to pay again to register for the exam. In such situations, if you're not confident of clearing the exam in your first attempt, I would strongly encourage you to consider the exam replay bundles that Microsoft offers. There are two different options that you can opt from. The first one is exam replay, which gives you a second attempt on the exam. So let's say if you go for an associate exam, it costs you generally at $165, but if you will go with the exam replay bundle, it will cost you around $210, $215-ish, and sometimes there might be further more discount. But look out for that. If you're not confident that you will be able to clear the exam in first attempt, try to consider the exam replay option. If you need to develop more confidence, you can also go and buy practice tests plus the second attempt, second take, or what they call as exam replay. Now, when you take these exam replays and exam plus practice test bundle, do note that it will give you vouchers that you can use to register for the exam. Those vouchers have a validity of 12 months. So it's always important to plan that based on the validity so that you should be able to take both and you should be able to make both attempts in the next 12 months. And another thing, if you buy an exam replay bundle today and you clear the exam in the first attempt, you cannot use the second attempt for a different exam. That is lost. So it's purely depend upon how comfortable do you feel, how much risk you want to take, and accordingly decide. Make sense, everyone?
Yes.
And I've listed a link down below if you would like to have a look at those bundles. Now here's the exam structure. Now this is a very generalized structure that I've listed here. There might be a slight change in each exam. Like they might not include one or the other set of questions, but at the general level, I have tried to list down what different kind of questions can be in that exam or in any exam that Microsoft conducts. So first of all, exams are time bound. It could be from 90 minutes to 210 minutes, which also includes the time that you will need to sign up and register for the exam at the time of the exam day. And generally, in my experience, it takes around at least hour and a half for me to go through an associate exam. And for expert exam, it took me around 2.5 hours at an average to clear those expert exams during the exam day. But in that exam, what also matters is how much time you might take is based on the questions. Like there are questions based on case studies. Microsoft will give you a case study explaining a situation, a scenario. They will give you a company name, they will explain a scenario where there exists a company who are trying to do certain things, and they will then present 3 or 4 different questions based on that case study on, hey, how will you implement solution to solve so and so problem listed in the case study? Which service will you use to achieve so and so thing listed in the case study, and so on. Then there are multiple choice questions also. For example, let's say an example, which of these services are part of storage account, and they can list blob, table, queue, and let's say SQL database. So they will let you choose multiple choices. And good part is if you are not sure of all the right options, at least go and give it an attempt, because they give you 1 point for every right answer. Then there are live labs in which I am not 100% positive if live labs used to be part of all the exams, but I remember it was part of a developer, administrator, and solution architect exam, where they give you a sandbox environment similar to what they have in Microsoft Learn courses. And they will give you 10 or 11 tasks that you have to perform in that sandbox environment. And I have really struggled in those lab environments because those lab environments are slow, and sometimes they cover end to end. Some of the tasks ask you to do some actions or create some resources and provision them in Azure portal. Then they also test your PowerShell and CLI skills as well in some of the exams. Luckily, if you're preparing for an exam currently, I think it's been over a year, Microsoft has discontinued those labs for now. I have found no documentation where it says they will start, but for now, I'm pretty sure. I have given a couple of exams last month, and there were no labs included in those exams. And I've heard of the same feedback. So it looks like currently it's been discontinued. So it's a good time if you want to go and appear for an exam without seeing those labs. I think great. You can consider giving an exam now. And then there are drag and drop code snippets based questions as well, where they will give you a code snippet and give you and put some text boxes in there in between the code snippet, and they will ask you to drag and drop right code snippet that should right code statement that should go in that code snippet in between. There might be just 2 or 3 or 4 depending upon how big is that code snippet. And lastly, it could be just plain yes or no question. And I have written it as a plain yes or no questions, but recently I have noticed what Microsoft has started doing is they have started giving some tricky questions as well. For example, they might present a situation to you, like there is a situation, you want to solve so-and-so problem. And then they will say you, we will go ahead and do this. Do you think this will solve your problem? So you opt for yes or no, and you click next. The moment you click next and go to next screen, it will present the same problem in the question, and it will say, hey, now I'm going to do something else. Will this solve the problem? And it will ask you the same thing, yes and no. And in my opinion, those are the most tricky questions in that exam, because for most of the other questions, there is an option to go back. But in these yes and no questions, there is no option to go back. So once you have given an answer for the earlier question, you cannot go back and change it. So I find those questions to be very confusing. It might be very individual basis, but be aware of that Microsoft gives those yes or no questions in a very tricky format where the problem remains the same. They will give you a different solution and ask you, do you think it will solve the problem or not? And sometimes the solutions are very, very close enough that you might think first that the first one might solve the problem, but when you go to the second question, you will realize that your first question's answer was wrong. Does that make sense? Anyone else has seen such questions in their exams? If not, that's okay, but be aware of those questions. And as I was saying, some of the questions can be marked for review, but the questions that I was saying, yes and no questions, those cannot be marked for review. So if you have any confusion while answering a question, I would encourage you that you should not really spend too much of your time on a single question. If there is an option to mark it for review, you can mark it for review and move on. Once you are done with the rest of the questions, before submission, you can go back to the question you have marked for review and spend more time on that and see what should be the right answer for that. Now, there is no fixed set of questions that might come in any of these exams. What I have seen is it might be somewhere from 45 questions to 75 questions, but that's the closest guess I can make based on the exams I have taken. And the exam questions bank Microsoft keeps on updating the set of questions, and they claim their revision cycle is 2 months, meaning every 2 months they update the questions in the exam. And when I said they have multiple question sets in for each of the exam, meaning if I go and appear for an exam, I might get a completely different set of exam. If Jeff goes and appears for the same exam today or tomorrow, he might get a completely different question set. So they have multiple question sets, which are again revised every 2 months. Now, all the exams maximum score that you can get is 1000, and the minimum passing score is 700. When I say 700, that doesn't mean that you have to necessarily score 70% of the questions right. It doesn't work like that. They use a different algorithm based on the difficulty of the question and how many answers were part of a single question, and then they calculate if you passed or not. And if your score comes to be more than 700, then you are declared passed. The best part of these certification exams are there is no negative marking. Hence, I will encourage you, even if you don't know an answer, you give an attempt. If you at least go and make a good close guess, chances are if it goes right, it might increase your score. If it doesn't, then it doesn't decreases your score because there is no negative marking. Lastly, as I was saying in the earlier slide, most of the questions have partial scoring. Be aware of that. For example, for those multiple choice questions, if they ask you to choose 3 options and you select all 3, but out of those 3, there were 2 were right and 1 was wrong, they will still give you add the score for those 2 correct options in your total score, and they will not deduct anything for the one which was wrong because there is no negative marking. And unlike AWS certifications, Microsoft gives you score immediately after you submit your last question, and they will declare if you passed or not. And as I was saying, there is no fixed algorithm which can conclude that if you score 70%, you clear. Hence, there is no fixed criteria of how many number of questions you have to answer correctly to clear the exam, because with each of the question, Microsoft also has tagged the difficulty level, and based on that difficulty level, Microsoft scores each question. Any questions so far? Okay, moving on, you will see there are some exams which are in beta right now, like the one AZ600, which is for Azure Stack. So if you find one of those exams, I would encourage you, if you are interested in giving one of those exams, go and register for that exam at the earliest. Because if you will try to register for that exam early, chances are you might show up in that first 300, 400 candidates who get 80% off on the exam cost, which is substantial, right? Out of $165, if I can save 80%, great. The challenge is the results are not shared immediately, because these are the beta exams, are the new exams, which Microsoft puts in beta state before it is released for everyone. And then Microsoft conducts these beta exams based on the initial set of users, and then take some feedback, improvise on that, and then release the exam for everyone. The challenge is the result is not shared immediately. It might take up to 2 to 3 months for you to get the results. But the advantage is once you get the result and the exam scores out of beta, you don't really have to take the exam, because you technically have cleared the exam and earned the appropriate certification. This is how once you clear an exam or whatever, even if you're not, Microsoft will always give you an exam score sheet detailing how did you do under each of the skill measured. So what I'm showing here is for the score sheet for one of the exams I cleared for Azure Architect exam. So as you can see, I scored 780 out of 1000, and it was higher than 700, which was the passing score. So I was declared as pass. And then you can also see the different skills section under there, where they are showing how much I scored in each of those sections, which really helps in case you are not able to clear it the first time. It gives you a clear visibility into what are the areas you should focus on before you can go for the second attempt. I have listed a URL there. If you are going to register for a certification and earn a certification, you would have to first create an account on that learning dashboard. Once you will have that, you can register your exams. And once you will clear that exam, you can see the congratulations message on the dashboard. You can go in and see any upcoming appointments in there, in that dashboard as well. What else you can do in that learning dashboard is you can download badges for the certifications you have already earned. You can share and download those badges. You can share it on social media and with your employer. You can also download certificates. You can also download transcripts of your earned certifications. So when you will go inside badges, it will show you all the different badges that you have earned for the certifications. Then you can click on share, and it will let you share the badge on social media. You can also copy the link for that badge and share it through email or any other way. Now this is managed by a third-party entity called as Acclaim. You might have to create an account with your Acclaim if you haven't created it in the past. Once you do that, all your badges will be stored in Acclaim repository, and you can directly share it from Acclaim. This is an example of a certificate that you will get. You can download a PDF for that. And I believe you can also order a physical copy for it at a price, but I have never requested for that. I have always just downloaded the soft copy for that. It's under the same learning dashboard that you can download from. This is a transcript based on whenever you clear any certifications. All those earned certifications are listed under your transcript. You can download the PDF copy of it. You can share it with your employer. You can share it with your friends and wherever you would need it. You can email it to yourself or your friends or wherever it need be. Now the good question. The next question should be, hey, it's okay, we understand what different kind of certifications are. How can we register? How can we register with Learning Dashboard, register for exam, download our badges, transcripts, and whatnot. But how do we get started with any preparation? So here are the steps that I followed, and I would encourage you to see what works for you and take it with you. The first thing I always do is I identify a certification based on my role and my work experience, because chances of earning that certification is way more than any other certification. If you haven't worked with Azure before and if you are planning to go with an Azure certification, you should get an Azure subscription as the first step. If you don't have an Azure subscription, I would suggest you to get it, because you need a playground to test all the concepts that you will be learning in every Azure certification. Third and most important, you should walk through the exam objectives thoroughly whenever you register for an exam. Under each exam page, they have a PDF with the exam objectives. Under each exam objective, they have listed exactly what they cover for each of those objectives, what services will be covered, what features of those services will be covered. So keep a track of that. I generally take a hard copy print of it and keep it at my desk, and I keep checking whichever I have completed so that I can track how much I have prepared and not. Fourth, identify the study resources that you are going to use for your preparation. Trust me, there are thousands of resources that you can use to prepare for your certification, which will not help you by any means if you will try to learn through all those 1,000 resources, because it will add more confusion to you. So what I highly recommend is identify the specific study resources that you can really use for your preparation. You can use Pluralsight, you might use YouTube, you might go and do courses in Microsoft Learn, but don't choose more than a couple of those resources and then stick with them. And lastly, create a plan and put a target date when you want to appear for your certification. I have seen friends who always want to give a certification and they have never given a certification because they never registered for it. There was no target date. They always kept on pushing it further and further. So I always recommend candidates who reach out to me that they want to appear for certification, I recommend go to the website and register for an exam that you're interested in for 2 months in advance, and give a target date of 2 months if that works for you, and start preparing for that. In worst case, if you think you will be missing the target date, you can always postpone the exam by a little bit, but at least that will give you a North Star that you can shoot for, and you can push yourself to prepare for your certification. Now there's a fellow MVP, Tim Warner. He's also a Pluralsight speaker. He has his own blog, timw.info, from where I have taken this screenshot, which essentially gives the idea of what it really takes to earn a certification. So it's one thing to know the content, or it's one thing to have past experience, but what it really also needs is a test taking strategy. If you are not really good in managing your time while giving the exam, managing your strategy for taking that test, you might not be able to clear the exam. So it's a mix of all those three things that are listed there. Does that make sense to everyone?
Yes.
Some learning resources. Whenever I prepare for certifications, I always rely on Microsoft Azure documentation, because that's the source of authority. It's always up to date. It is what says is truth. Everything else, if I go and check it out, that might not be true, that might be outdated, and things might have changed. So whenever I prepare for a certification, one of the study resources that I use is Microsoft Azure documentation, and I do lots of reading through that. The second one is Microsoft Learn, which Microsoft has come up recently in last couple of years, and it has been grown up into a very good product where they have listed different learning paths, and some of these learning paths are actually aligned with some of these Azure role-based certifications. So I would strongly encourage you to go and check out Microsoft Learn, and it's all free. There are no charges for going through that. Then there are some exam references as well, which are published by Microsoft Press. You can buy it on Amazon or Barnes and Nobles and other leading bookstores. I have given a screenshot of a book from one of the fellow MVPs, Mike Pfeiffer. So that's for exam AZ303. But likewise, there are study guides published by different other publishers as well. You can go and purchase them if that is what you can that is what can help you in your preparation. Then there are many online blogs where people publish different study guides, links to different study material that you can use. I would strongly encourage you to do a Google search for study guides and you will find many exams guide. One of my favorite has been Thomas Moyer. He's based out of Europe and he has published some good, decent study guides in his blog. So go and do check it out. Then if you are a fan of video or in based trainings, then there are many training portals which have come up in last few years. Pluralsight, in my opinion, is the leader. Whenever I go for my certification trainings, I find Pluralsight to have good content that I can really rely on. Then it also has Learning Path. And if you don't have a Pluralsight subscription, Microsoft has partnered with Pluralsight to offer over 200 courses for free. So check out the link I have listed under free content section. There you will find over 200 courses available for free, which you can watch on Pluralsight. The next one is LinkedIn Learning, which was previously lynda.com. If you have a LinkedIn Premium subscription, you might already have access to it. I have found some good courses related to some of these certifications in LinkedIn Learning. Next is WizLabs. I don't really go with their courses, but what I really utilize is their practice tests. Though WizLab is not an authorized practice test provider by Microsoft, but it's a very good, they have a very good practice test. So if you are at all interested, if you can't buy MeasureUp practice tests, which are the official practice tests by Microsoft, you can also consider WizLabs, which are slightly cheaper. Then Skill Me Up or Obstility learning paths. I don't have Skill Me Up subscription anymore, but back in 2019, I used to use Skill Me Up a lot for my preparation. It was back then, it was part of my MSDN subscription. Now it's not included, but if you have Skill Me Up subscription, they have really nice learning paths on Microsoft Azure. Then Udemy, Channel 9, and YouTube also have some content. And you can go and Google, and there are, I don't know how many more different online learning platforms. It's up to you what works for you, but stick with one or two and just follow. That is my recommendation. Do's and don'ts based on my experience. As I've said, do check out Microsoft exams policies and FAQs before appearing for an exam. They have listed all the different things about what you should follow legally and what is the expectation from a candidate. Then now each exam is time bound and some questions might take more time than others. So you have to plan your time well. And this aligns back to that test taking strategy from the diagram I was showing from Tim Werner's website. Next, mark the questions that you are not sure for review and revisit them later. I have seen candidates who go and get stuck with questions which are difficult and they don't know answer of, and they keep on thinking about it and takes so much of time. So in such questions, the best strategy is just mark them for review, move on, answer all the questions that you are confident on, and then come back to the questions that you have marked for review and answer them. When you prepare for your certification, it's not going to take a day or two. It's going to take weeks or months for you to prepare. So what has really worked for me is to maintain a journal to keep taking my notes whenever I'm preparing for my exam. And this has really paid me off well, because if I take the high level notes on my journal, I don't write on a physical copy. I use my iPad and I use Notes app to take notes on there, so that when I'm within a week, when I'm about to take the exam, I can just go through my own notes to refresh my memory, and I don't have to go back to the extensive library of all the other resources. Hope that will be helpful to you as well. And again, practice each and every concept that you learn. It's just not about reading. It's just not enough to know the things conceptually. It's also essential to know how will you implement, how will you actually implement everything, each of those services in Azure. Last, buy practice tests which are authorized by Microsoft. And even though I did say WizLab, which is not authorized, so if you can afford, I would strongly encourage you to go and buy the practice tests which are authorized by Microsoft. Seventh one is a no-brainer. Don't get tempted to buy and use brain dumps. That's a strictly no-no. First of all, it's not legal to use brain dumps. And secondly, you are cheating yourself if you go with brain dumps. Lastly, share a digital badge. Once you clear your exam, once you earn a certification, it's a time for celebration. Go and share your digital badge with your peers, with your friends. Share it on social media and celebrate. Some additional tips. Nothing can beat your experience. If you have been working on Azure for some time now, you already have an edge to earn a certification. And if you don't have experience, that's also okay. What really matters is your hard work. Before you start putting in your hours, it's critical to have your action plan ready with the resources that you are going to use for your certification preparation. Have your plan ready and follow that plan, and you will be all successful. To prepare an action plan, the first thing is to identify the skills that this certification evaluates. You can check my blog post. I have published 3 or 4 certification study guides. Other than that, you can also go to the exam objectives for each of the exam and see what skills each of these exams or certifications evaluate against. Then list down the skills that you are confident that you are strong enough, you understand those particular concepts, and then also list the concepts that you are not very confident on, you are not very comfortable with. Then based on that list, prepare an action plan, revise the concepts you already know, and learn the concepts that you don't know or you're not comfortable with. For the concepts that you already know, I would assume you will need less time. For the concepts that you haven't worked before, you don't know, will probably take more time for your preparation. And then your action plan, again, is just not about reading or understanding at a reading perspective, but it should also include hands-on labs and practice sessions. And that is why I was saying you need to have Azure subscription. If you already have an MSDN subscription, you already have access to Azure credits as part of that MSDN, which can be used as a playground for your preparation. Line number 6 is a trick I can tell you, which will be very handy if you are preparing for any exam. If that exam covers any Azure service, if you'll go to the documentation for that Azure service, and if we'll scroll down the menu that is on the left side, there will be a one section towards the very bottom called as FAQs. Before you are wrapping up a service or your preparation for that service, go through those FAQs. It will help you understand all the different areas that you might have missed, and those will be super helpful in getting some of the answers correct in the exams. And lastly, don't look for shortcuts. Depending upon your speed, keep at least 4 weeks of time in your hand before you plan to appear for a certification. Lastly, I mean, I have earned many certifications in my career so far. I have 6 or 7 role-based certifications. Before that, I've earned the older 734, 534, 535 exams. Then before that, I had MCSA, MCSC. I see certifications as a great value addition to your resume. It also helps you in improving your skill set. Some of the benefits that I could think of is, the first one is it certainly helps you getting hired or promoted by giving you an advantage that you are certified over the people who are not certified. Now, certifications are credentials that can help you illustrate your knowledge in a specific technology and brings professional credibility, which might be difficult to prove without a certification. Now, that's one piece of it. If you don't look at getting that benefit, at least consider that certifications force you to learn technologies and concepts outside of your day-to-day project work. It gives you that roadmap which you can follow to learn all the underlying concepts for the particular role you are aspiring for. It forces you to learn technology you already know in depth, increasing your efficiency and productivity. And lastly, it can also help you keep up to date with the latest technologies. I have listed a link for a white paper down there, which was published by Pearson VUE. And what they have mentioned is, upon earning a certification, 23% of Microsoft certified technologists reported receiving up to a 20% salary increase. What's more, certified employees are often entrusted with supervising their peers, putting them on the fast track for a promotion. So certifications, just by clearing those exams, might not help as such for the namesake, but the process that is involved, the time that you spend for that preparation in understanding those concepts and learning those concepts and practicing those things actually really help you out in outgrowing in your career. With that, that's pretty much I had to present. If I can open the floor for any question and the questions that you might have, and I will be more than happy to answer whatever I can.
Maybe I'll just make the comment. When I sat for my 103, I'm used to having at least a large monitor. You know, I understand taking a test you may not use two, but it caught me by surprise when the test and monitor told me no external monitors. And, you know, I had a relatively small laptop monitor. So maybe just give people an idea of what they can expect when they sit for their first exam, since it's going to be online and because of COVID.
This is actually strange because I have 3 monitors and I give all the exams at my desk. I do plug off 2 monitors, but I still use my monitor. I close the lid of my laptop and keep it behind the monitor. And they have always allowed me to give. They say there should just be one screen active. And if you want to use a single monitor, you have to have your lid closed for the laptop. So probably it has to be do with that individual proctor who might have shown up in your case.
I was just unlucky. This was about 6 to 7 months ago. I had to take my webcam, zoom around the office. I had to physically unplug the monitor, the power cable. They wanted to see the power cable unplugged.
That's right. They do ask me every time that can you show us the power cables for both the other monitors which are unplugged.
Yeah.
And so, and they do ask me to take my webcam off and show them once what's around there. So that's all great stuff. And I think the best part I like about that experience is I can give all the exams at the comfort of my home when my kids are asleep. I generally give exams at 9 o'clock at evening or 5 o'clock in the morning. And
that's true. You do want that uninterrupted time, because I think if someone opens the door or someone walks in, they can sometimes invalidate the test.
So you have to be, you brought up a very good point, because if you go to a training center, a test center to give a test, I think you don't have to worry about so many things because the hardware is provided by the test center. You just go and take the exam and come back. But when you're taking it at home, you have to prepare your desk in such a way that you are abiding with the policies of the certification exam Pearson VUE. And you have to be careful of few things. You cannot have any pop-ups showing up when you are taking exam. If any pop-ups show up, they will cancel your exam immediately. If they notice any lip movement, like when I remember, sometimes I read questions to myself to get a better understanding. But if they will notice any lip movement, they might point you out or they might cancel your exam as well. So it's kind of get little tricky when you're taking home, but if you abide with whatever rules they have, I think it's super convenient to take it from home.
Yeah, I've heard horror stories about the quality of the desktops and the monitors in some of the testing centers, at least here in Florida. So
yeah,
another reason why it's nice to take it on your own desktop sometimes.
Absolutely. Any other questions?
Hey, this is Deborah Burr. Can you hear me?
Yes,
I can.
Yes. Hey, Vaibhav, thank you very much. This was amazing, an enormous amount of information and where to go. You have inspired me. I'm going to get my Azure fundamentals. I'm going to get that Azure subscription, study some use cases, do some code snippets, and I think I'll be good. And Jeff, always nice to see you. Thank you for reminding us that security is important. And just my opinion, I think security and DevOps. So I guess DevSecOps, that would be a good
Hey,
focus.
Deborah, since you said you are going to appear for Azure Fundamentals, I'm not sure if you already have registered for that or not, but I can give you a tip where you can save those $99 for yourself.
That would be amazing. Okay.
Go and search. You have to do a Google search for Microsoft Azure Virtual Training Days. And Microsoft
Azure Virtual Training Days.
That's right. So if you it will give you a link where Microsoft would have published these virtual trainings, It might be 1 day or 2 day training which you have to attend, which covers all the concepts that they cover in Azure Fundamentals exam. And at the completion of the training, they will give you a voucher that you can use to register for that exam for free.
Nice, very nice. Thank you very much. I'll come to the next meetup and let you know that I got it.
And another tip for everyone, now we have Microsoft Ignite coming up in March. So do keep an eye on something known as Cloud Skills Challenge. So they ask you, as part of Cloud Skills Challenge, they will ask you to go through 1 or 2 modules in Microsoft Learn. And if you will complete that, they will give you another voucher that you can use for any other certification. You can go for security one or anyone, even associate or expert certification. I have used them twice last year, one from Build and one from Ignite, and they have launched Ignite again in March. I'm looking forward to it.
That's great. Thank you.
Sam, any thought-provoking questions from you?
None that would value you guys.
Can we count on you taking at least the Azure Fundamentals exam and reporting the results back?
Yeah, that's fine. I'll let you know how I get on. I've recorded all this, guys, so we'll share that too. So if you've missed anything, or actually, I'm sure the deck we can pass that deck across, couldn't we?
I'll be sending the PDF for the slide deck to Jeff tonight, and then Jeff, feel free to share it.
And then you guys are kind of in the know, and if there's anything you want to pick apart or dissect or look into further, we can share that out. But thank you so much for that, Vaibhav.
And I would like to thank everyone to attend this session. And again, I'm a strong advocate of role-based certifications. You will find folks who are generally don't advocate as well, who are strong advocates. So I'm one of those strongest advocates. The best advantage I feel is it gives me a roadmap for preparing. Like if I want to go into data engineer role, it's a best platform which gives me a roadmap, what skills I need to be aware of if I want to be a data engineer. So that's the best part. And well, thanks again. Thanks, Jeff, for having me. And I wish everyone to stay safe, stay healthy, wear masks, and hopefully everyone will get vaccination soon.
Fingers crossed, sooner the better.
All right, David, a lot of great information. Thank you for that, and happy testing, everybody. You can report your results back as we all get certified.
Yeah, plan.
And feel free to reach out to me on Twitter, on LinkedIn, if you have any questions around Azure Role-Based Certifications. I was at Ignite in November 2019 when I appeared for these certifications, and I earned 6 certifications in 3 days. So I prepared for 3 months before that event, but I have
a bit
really
intense. Maybe,
so,
maybe quite a lot in a short space of time.
I think based on whatever sessions I speak on, role-based certifications is a session which I'm so confident on, because I speak on based on my experience. I have given these certification exams in the past, and it has really helped me in my career personally. I know how some of these exams are. So feel free to reach out to me. I will be so super happy to help you out.
All right, terrific. Thanks much. Have a good evening, everybody.
Enjoy your evenings, guys.
Cheers, guys. Thank you for that, Vaibhav, as well.
Thank you all. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thanks, guys. Take care.
Bye.